Hello and welcome to the Insight Exchange. I'm Stephen Lester and I'm the Partner Business Manager for Juniper Networks at Insight. Today I have with me Gemma from Juniper Networks, Head of Further Education. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, thank you, Stephen. My name is Gemma James. As I said, I'm the Head of Further Education for Juniper Networks. You can call me Gem. Brief podded history. Recently joined Juniper Networks to drive the further education sector, mainly because I think we both agree the value of MIST into that sector. Indeed. Before that, I was the Head of Education for the UK and Ireland for Extreme Networks. Before that, the Head of Education for Aerohive Networks. Okay. And before that, I was the Head of Higher Education for a reseller which worked with HP Aruba. Right. So I wanted to give that, just to give an idea that I have a good sort of 10 to 12 year history now. A
lot of brands, a lot of history.
A lot of brands, a lot of history, exactly, yes, thank you.
Fantastic. I mean, looking back at my higher education, we are going 30 years back now. Bulletin boards were the thing, 33.6K dial-up was a thing. Today, obviously, within the university environment, Gen Z want always on demand, high speed, video, seamless connectivity. How would you say have things changed on university campuses in that time scale? How demanding are Gen Z today on a university campus?
It's a whole other level. Because I'm also the dial-up generation. Yeah. So even though we have an expectation for our technology, we probably have just a little bit edge of patience,
yes,
I suppose.
I would agree with that.
So from my experience in university, I also didn't have Wi-Fi in halls. This is 20 years ago. And I had a bright green 30-foot Ethernet cable that I remember walking into my student hall's room and seeing it curled up in the corner and having no idea what it was or what it did, because we had pretty basic dial-up in my house at the time. So I think you're right. I think the biggest change from a consumer perspective, from a student perspective, is the expectation. They have a 100% uptime expectation. Slow is broken when it comes to
There's nothing else but wireless. They've never seen an Ethernet cable in their life.
Oh, they're not going to be plugging into a RJ45 port in the wall. They wouldn't even know what it was, I suspect, at this point.
True. So things have changed and things have definitely ramped up in terms of what networking providers are expected to deliver on university campuses.
I'll tell you what, if I turned up to Keele University in 2001 with a games console and told the IT team I wanted to use it in my room, they would have laughed me out of the halls. So yeah, big changes.
So what would you say are the unique cybersecurity challenges facing university campuses today?
Oh, of course, straight in.
It's a broad question.
Straight in, unique cybersecurity. Question. Well, because we have this student expectation, you're not giving them specific devices that are clean and scrubbed and sat on site and sat on premises in a little locked up drawer.
It's whatever they brought from home.
And also it's not just one or two devices. We're moving into wearables. I've mentioned games consoles, handhelds, phones. I personally have with me today, I have 3 wireless devices, smartwatches, etc., etc. And also, not just that they're using them on campus for day-to-day activity and network connectivity, but we've got things like esports, the use of CGI, and all these other complex studies that are happening on university and college campuses that also need a balance between educational freedom and security. Right. So that, for me, I think personally, given that I work a lot on the edge, with the students, with the faculty, with the IT teams, that seems to be a real issue when it comes to cybersecurity and education, is the balance. Because in higher education, they're over 18, right? True. So we have to allow them a certain amount of adult freedoms, but you're still an educational organisation.
Yeah, you don't want to nanny them in the same way your workplace would restrict your browsing activity.
So that's higher education. But to add extra complexity, especially since COVID, a lot of these higher education organisations and further education organisations are opening up their campuses 24/7 to guest contractors, the movie industry and TV for locations, underage kids coming in to do summer school and all that sort of stuff. So suddenly, it's not just balancing educational freedom for an adult, you're also balancing educational freedom and under 18s and over 18s, and in some cases over 25s, over 40s, over 50s. It's completely changed in the last 5 years, in my opinion. Yeah. It's really, really kind of jumped forward again.
Exceedingly complicated.
Exceedingly complicated.
So, given that there's all these complications to take into account, everyone's still worried about data breaches. I don't think people think of universities in the same way. They think, well, how terrible would it be if Capital One got breached? You know, what would be the consequences for a university having a data breach?
So I think it's gonna depend on the university here. So if you're talking about a research-led university, Russell Group, Red Brick, which I think there are 27 in the UK, their research is worth millions, multi-millions to them for the advancement of that university, for their global funding, for their student engagement and retention, for competition to drive people like great professors, great lecturers, great researchers, as well as students into their organisation.
So highly valuable IP.
Yeah, highly valuable IP, because the last thing you want is, I mean, and think about what some of the universities in the UK are doing, like Warwick, like Oxford, like Cambridge. They're researching into cancer research. They're researching into artificial intelligence. They're doing research into environmentalism, sustainability, the circular economy, and also some very, I mean, socially and often financially important aspects of
pharmaceuticals,
the growth of the UK.
Defence.
Yeah, exactly. They are on the front line and the forefront of everything the UK will be doing in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
They're driving everything forward. And they also tend to be on the cutting and bleeding edge of technology as well. So they want to try the new shiny thing that's going to protect their research and bring in more students and bring in more professors. But then we have to secure the new shiny thing. And we're learning about the shiny thing at the same time as the bad guys.
True.
So there's a kind of a very, you could be very quick and very on it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of information there that rogue states would love to get their hands on and things like that. And I think when you think university, you think of it, oh, I went to university, you think of it from a student's perspective rather than the professor's perspective or the people doing their doctorates. So that's really interesting. So how do cybersecurity threats compromise academic integrity?
Well, I mean, okay, so here's an interesting little factoid. Most universities have probably had some form of breach in the last 4 to 5 years.
Well, you wouldn't see, I've never seen that in a headline, you know.
You won't, because that's how big an impact it has on the research numbers, the finance, the professorships, the students, the retention, because you've got to remember, at a higher education, every student has got a £10,000 price tag now. And that's not for the 3 years like it was for me. It was free for you, right?
The tuition was free.
Yes. See, I was the first year that had to pay. And for me, you know, for me, £9,000 was the whole thing. Now.
And if it's an international student, you can times that by 5, 6.
But now it's £10,000 per year per student, and that's just for the students coming in. So not only is there a definitive economical impact in having bad cybersecurity practices, your university will see a contraction. You'll be undersubscribed going into the next academic year. You're not going to drive the best talent. You're not going to build the best relationships with the private industry. It's huge.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Such a competitive marketplace with a number of institutions now that it could really
it's
impact.
So competitive.
Yeah.
They don't like to share the information. They don't like to say, we were hacked, we had a problem, this is how we solved it, let's share these best practices, because they're so nervous of it having a negative impact on the reputation and then all the things that affects, that they almost don't want to share best practice. It's almost too insular. It's fascinating.
Okay. I'm moving on to another hot topic, AI.
Yes.
I know everyone out there might be sick to death of hearing about AI, but let's be honest, it is the de facto
it's the future.
go-to experience at the moment. How can AI be used in higher education bodies, given such diverse student needs?
Okay, so
as succinctly as you can, again, a very broad question.
I love that you saw me take a deep breath. You're like, oh, she's got a response for this one. So, when we talk about utilizing AI on a college or university campus, there are 2 ways that it can be implemented. The first is from a network infrastructure perspective. So helping the IT teams, the help desks, the IT directors, the digital learning leaders, helping them to get something very cool out of their network infrastructure.
Right.
Okay. Now that can go as far as integrating with systems to look at environmentalism, turning on heating systems on and off, looking at lighting. So not just making the network better, more visible, easier to manage, easier to make kind of decisions, but also having real world impact on the network as well, because everything's network now, right? Fridges, lights, the works.
Everything's connected. So it can be great for your carbon emissions
Yes,
and all of that
exactly.
good stuff. Right.
That's what I'm talking about there. So that's one way that we can discuss, which is AI and the networking, which is fascinating. And that is where Juniper excels, because we are the only native AI network infrastructure business built from the ground up, from data center right out to your edge devices, full analytics and visibility. So that's what we do very, very well. But where we really care about AI in higher and further education is how it impacts the students and the users. Those kids now, I say kids, 18-year-olds, with a £10,000 price tag on their heads. And put it this way, universities have such a high churn in the first 50 days, as in people starting and leaving the university.
Yeah, I remember quite a few, people leaving, so it's not for me. I'm going to get out after 2 or 3 weeks.
It's such a high churn in the first 50 days that most universities don't even count it in their statistics.
Wow.
That's how high the churn is.
Okay.
So if we can use AI, machine learning, to get greater visibility of the campus, to create a more personalized learning for an individual going onto campus, if we can monitor, and this is metadata and management traffic, so it's all GDPR tick boxed, right? But if we can check and see if a student is actually engaging with the university, engaging with the college, is leaving their halls, is leaving their home, is going to a lecture, then we know that they're engaging, that they're kind of perhaps their mental health's in the right place. They're navigating around the university. They're making friends.
Really interesting. So from a mental health angle, for example, you could look and see, well, that person's not left their lodgings for some time. I hope they're okay. Let's go and check on it.
You can be proactive about it. So, little Johnny hasn't left his room for 3 weeks, but we know that little Johnny hasn't left his room for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So someone can go knock on his door and say, hey man, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, is there a problem? Are you struggling to make friends or whatever? But from another aspect of that, by using this data-driven networking decision-making, we can make sure that little Johnny does know that he can find friends on campus. So for example, Juniper has locations inbuilt into the wireless APs, and we do virtual beacons, so no charging random batteries and all this kind of stuff. It's all inbuilt. And we can set that up to do proximity or push notifications, for example. So, or with the Marvis overlay, which is our AI platform.
Like you'd have in shopping malls where it's you're walking around and your phone goes 10% off at the shop.
Yes, exactly. But this way we can use it to personalize Johnny's learning experience, right? Who Johnny is, but he's our new friend, right? So that's, for example, Johnny rocks up into university campus September the 3rd. He's 18. Everyone thinks you're an adult 18. You're not, right? Are you? I remember being 18.
Yeah, being honest.
Yeah.
Think you know it all, know very little.
Exactly. But he comes onto site and he's nervous and he's afraid. I am a massive extrovert. I was nervous on my first day at university, absolutely petrified. So he comes onto site and do you know what? His phone goes, bing, hi Johnny, welcome to the University of Kiel. That was my university. Click here to download your new student checklist. Right? Clicks a button, it says, okay, Johnny, step number 1, go and find your halls of residence tutor. Click here for directions. Like, straight away.
The amount of information you can get to them quickly and easily.
Yes, but it takes away the fear. So it's about, so yes, we can talk about AI and the network, and that's very technical, and that's very, very cool, and the principals all like that, and the engineers all like that. When we talk about the actual day-to-day lives of an 18-year-old rocking up to uni for the first time, this is where AI and machine learning and intelligence and data-driven intelligence can genuinely make an individual's life just that little bit better when they're away from home for the first time.
And
more personalised.
Exactly. I suppose one of the big fears, though, with AI from a faculty and the people doing the teaching's point of view is, how do we stop AI being used to plagiarise or write essays for people that they haven't done themselves? And that must be a huge challenge as well.
I mean, I've sat in a few conferences with the further education specifically, a lot of the colleges in Wales as well. And this is something that they are putting a lot of time and energy into. Because if I'm completely honest with you, I don't have an answer for that. I don't have an answer for that yet. This is something
that's so new. Everyone is trying to tackle it. And
absolutely. Because I know that there's software being developed to identify when something is written by AI, but actually it's not that, it's not that great yet as a technology. So I think that's almost something that has to be driven by academia. But that's one of the reasons that when I go out and I meet a new college for the first time and I want to go in and speak to them about their network infrastructure, the first thing I'm encouraging them to do is have a stakeholder meeting. So that's not just your IT director, your CTO, but actually that's your facilities manager, that's your head of digital learning, that is anyone that has a vested interest in how technology is used on campus for the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years is in that room to discuss. And I'd expect curriculum leaders to also be in that room so that we can discuss how we can combat that from a network perspective. I mean, you'd have thought that if 30 students typed in the same prompt into ChatGPT, you'd get 30 of the same
introduction in 30. Something's going wrong here.
Because I think we're in a weird in-between stage with AI, in my opinion. Because I use ChatGPT for basic stuff here and there when I have to write a paragraph or jot down some questions for an interview. And but even then, I can see its issues. I can see the holes in it straight away. So I think the real problems are going to come when it gets particularly advanced. But that's just about us making sure.
Which is not that far away, if you believe the experts.
I know. So it's very important for companies like Juniper, Cisco, HP, all the big players in this area.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we're retaining a certain level of security.
Sure.
And by using people like AWS and Google for our data centers, that really helps because they are very, very good data centers. So
brilliant. Just going back to the pathfinding and wayfinding features on Juniper access points and Mist. You went to Kiel, Campus University, I believe. Visited there myself when I was at university as a friend there. I was at Sheffield, which is not a campus university. It's spread right across the city. Can Juniper help a university that is geographically diverse like that? And how would you go about it?
Absolutely. So 2 responses on that from a geographically dispersed network. There's a couple of very cool features in Juniper. One of which, and it's so simple, but a lot of our competitors don't quite do this, and that's hierarchical management within the Mist platform. So for example, we have lots of multi-academy trusts now. We also have lots of college groups. I mean, Activate Learning is 6 or 7 colleges. Newcastle College Group is 6 or 7 colleges. And those 6 or 7 colleges are in different parts of the town. And they still need to have a set of slightly different, perhaps, onboarding or configurations than another one of the sites.
Right.
So you might have a primary configuration for this college group, but then you might need to have 6 slightly different onboarding or 6 slightly different configurations or 6 slightly different profiles. And you can do that because you have this hierarchical geographical visibility of your network. I like that. I've done some research recently. I thought that was a very useful feature for these kind of larger campuses.
Definitely.
One other thing about Juniper is that we're very, very API driven. So we like to integrate very well with other systems. So we integrate with seats and we integrate with other building management systems and things like that, so that you can take that baseline technology of the location, the Bluetooth, virtual Bluetooth low energy beacons, and then using APIs, integrate with another piece of software so that you've got your inbuilt wayfinding, and then you want to partner with maybe another software that can then integrate with the Google Maps, so you have this sort of seamless. So that's what we're trying to be, this really clever API-driven integration partner that has all of these capabilities to integrate with things like seats and there's a great student monitoring system that we integrate with as well for people that are coming in.
Certainly ahead of the competition in a lot of regards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think a lot of our competitors are even quite thinking about that.
Sure.
So when I go speak to a prospect or a customer for the first time about Juniper, I never talk about how many ports they need at the core of the network or how many exactly. Yeah. What I do is I say to them, what do you want your students to experience? How do you want your students to consume the network?
That's what's driving it, isn't it? The student experience.
Absolutely. And that is the number one priority.
They're going to go back and say, I'm having a fantastic time at whatever institution it may be. the internet's great, it's super fast, we can do LAN parties, we can do all this mad
Yes.
stuff. And, you know, they're out there evangelizing to their friends, younger brothers and sisters, this university's great. And that's all driven by the wireless network at the end of the day.
I love that you brought up LAN parties.
Well,
because a number of years ago when I was first doing Wi-Fi, this is back in the 802.11n days, we're talking 2012, something like that. And I was putting in the Wi-Fi into a halls of residence, into an independent school. And I was walking around with the IT director. We walked up to the halls of residence, and no word of a lie, there was a giant fat Ethernet cable coming out of one room, looping around the door, going into another room, looping around the door, and looping into another one, where they created a LAN parties by literally cabling their.
Thank goodness cables have gone now, otherwise they'd
That's
be
what the IT director said. He was like, ripping out the cables, putting in Wi-Fi
a nightmare
down.
for your facilities manager.
But now, you see, again, and this is relevant for Juniper, we can now create room area networks, you see.
Right.
So actually that LAN party now can be done on the Wi-Fi.
True.
Because you can get your mate to come in, give them a key, get on your little room area network.
There you go.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But then we're set up for that.
So going back to AI for a second,
Okay.
how can AI in a intelligent network monitor its performance and make sure that uptime is as good as possible?
It's all about the data. Juniper has been collecting metadata management traffic again since, I want to say 2006. So we're getting on for nearly 20 years of accurate, usable data. So when we speak to our customers about Marvis, the AI platform overlay for Juniper Mist, we talk about how you need to properly invest, because it's only going to have value if you are looking at all the data.
And this goes back to the
data.
built from the ground up that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
With that level of back data to look at and utilize and improve.
Yes.
Again,
exactly.
something that the competition are slightly behind the curve on, I would say.
No one else has got 20 years of usable, accurate data that we can have, that we can make intelligent decisions on based on the requirements of specific users. Because when you've been monitoring those users for this long as Juniper Mist has, we are now in a position to present data and make decisions based on it. And that's not just for customers, that's for us as well. Because it's a platform built on containerized microservices, we can do very advanced feature updates and quite quickly as well. Because if we want to, make any amendments or anything, we just got to play with that one container. So there's no downtime. There's no, which means that we can move our customers onto Wi-Fi as their primary access layer, knowing it's got this phenomenal failover on AWS and Google all over the world, that it's built in these containers. It just means you have a really, really solid uptime. It's a technology that you can just sort of trust in.
Excellent. So last question really, AI when it comes to privacy and especially data privacy. I mean, you touched on it briefly earlier, but what would you say the risks are of AI and data privacy, really?
I think the biggest risks are the one we don't know about yet. I hate to throw it back at you, but do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it's getting rather philosophical, but I take your point that it is evolving so quickly.
Yes.
That, there are those who say AI will kill us all in 10 years, and then there are those who say it will be the best thing ever to happen to humanity.
And it'll probably be somewhere in the middle.
It probably will be somewhere in the middle. I mean, you've still got people who are like, the internet is the demon and we never should have unleashed it from the bottle in the first place. But we're too far gone for that now. And I think AI is in the same path. And I think there are a lot of things that people aren't thinking of. I mean, you look at robots and things that are coming out of Tesla. And I think if people look at this stuff, it's either a dystopian nightmare or the future of humanity. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting one.
Wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I think that's an interesting one to leave it on and let people ponder on what the future holds.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Agreed.
If anyone wants to ask more questions about Juniper Networks portfolio, AI, Mist, Marvis, and why Juniper's the current market leader within further education for its performance and AI features, please don't hesitate to get in touch with your Insight Sales Manager. Thanks again for your time today, Gemma. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.